T-Rexcellent Reviews presents a prehistoric reading of The Meg, a novel of deep terror. From the moment the early morning fog had begun to lift, they sensed they were being watched. The herd of Shantungosaurus had been grazing along the misty shoreline all morning, measuring more than 40 feet from their duck-billed heads to the end of their tails. These reptiles, the largest of the hadrosaurs, gorged themselves in the abundant supply of kelp and seaweed that continued to wash up along the shoreline with the incoming tide. Every few moments, the gentle giants raised their heads like a herd of nervous deer, listening to the noises of the nearby forest. They watched the dark trees and the thick vegetation for movement, ready to run at the first sign of approach. Across the beach, hidden among the tall trees and thick undergrowth, a pair of red reptilian eyes followed the herd. The Tyrannosaurus rex, largest and most lethal of all terrestrial carnivores, towered 22 feet above the forest floor. Saliva oozed from the big male's mouth, its muscles quivering with adrenaline as it focused on two duckbills venturing out into the shallows, isolating themselves from the herd. With a blood-curdling roar, the killer crashed through the trees, its 8 tons pounding the sand and shaking the earth with every step. The duckbills momentarily froze, then rose on their hind legs and scattered in both directions along the beach. The two hadrosaurs grazing in the surf saw the carnivore closing in on them, its jaws wide, fangs bared, its bone-chilling trumpet drowning the crash of the surf. Trapped, the pair turned and plunged into the deeper water to escape. They strained their long necks forward and began to swim, their legs churning to keep their heads above the water. Driven by hunger, the T-Rex crashed through the surf after them. Far from buoyant, the killer waded into the deeper waters, snapping its jaws at the incoming swells. But as it neared its prey, the T-Rex's clawed fin sank deep into the muddy sea floor, its weight driving it into the mire. The hadrosaurs paddled in 30 feet of water, safe for the moment. But having escaped one predator, they now faced another. The 6-foot gray dorsal fin rose slowly from the sea, its unseen girth sliding silently across the dinosaur's path. If the T-Rex was the most terrifying creature to ever walk the earth, then Carcharodon Megalodon was easily lord and master of the sea. 60 feet from its conical snout to the tip of its half-moon-shaped conical fin, the shark moved effortlessly through its liquid domain, circling its outmatched prey. It could feel the racing heartbeats of the hadrosaurs and the heavier thump, thump of the T-Rex. Its amphiloxenia, gill-filled sensory pores located beneath its snout, directing the pounding organ's electrical impulses. A line of neural cells along its flank registered each unique vibration in the water, while its directional nostrils tasted the scent of sweat and urine secreted from its floundering meal-to-be. The pair of hadrosaurs were paralyzed in fear, their eyes following the unseen creature's sheer moving mass, which circled closer, creating a current of water that lifted and dragged the two reptiles into deeper water. The sudden change panicked the duckbills, the beasts quickly reversing direction, paddling back towards the beach. They would take their chances with the Tyrannosaurus. Legs churning water, they moved back into the shallows, feeling the mud swelling beneath their feet. T-Rex, in water up to its burly chest, let out a thundering growl, but could not advance, the predator struggling to keep from sinking farther into the soft seafloor. The duckbills neared the reptile's snapping jaws, then suddenly broke formation, striding in separate directions, passing within a harrowing few feet of the frustrated hunter. The T-Rex lunged, snapping its terrible jaws, howling in rage at its fleeing prey. The duckbills never stopped, bounding through the smaller waves until they staggered onto the beach and collapsed on the warm sand, too exhausted to move. Still sinking, the Tyrannosaurus Rex had to struggle to keep its huge head only a few feet above the water. Insane with rage, it lashed its tail wildly in an attempt to free one of its hind legs. Then, all at once, it stopped and stared out to sea. From the dark waters, a great dorsal fin was approaching, slicing through the fog. The T-Rex cocked its head and stood perfectly still, its instincts telling it that it had wandered into the domain of a superior hunter. The Tyrannosaurus felt the tug of current caused by the 30 tons of circling mass. Its red eyes followed the grey dorsal fin until it finally disappeared beneath the murky waters. T-Rex growled quietly, searching through the haze. Leaning forward, it managed to free one of its thickly muscled hind legs, then quickly freed the other. On the beach, the Hadrosaurus took notice, got up, and backed away, as the towering dorsal fin rose again from the mist, this time racing directly for the T-Rex. The dinosaur roared, accepting the challenge, its jaws snapping in anger. The wake kept coming, though, the dorsal fin rising higher and higher, while underwater, the unseen assailant's head rotated slightly, its jaws hyperextending seconds before it slammed into the T-Rex soft midsection like a freight train striking a disabled SUV. The T-Rex slammed backward through the water with a great whoosh, its breath coming out of its crushed lungs, an eruption of blood spewing from its open mouth seconds before its head disappeared beneath the waves. With another whoosh, the dinosaur fought its way back to the surface, its ribcage crushed within the powerful jaws of its still unseen killer. The T-Rex was choking on its own gushing innards, and then the fearsome land dweller vanished beneath the swirling pool of the Scarlet Sea. The two hadrosaurs had watched the scene unfold. They waited for their stalker to reappear, their bladders releasing in fear. A long moment passed, and the sea remained silent. The spell of the attack had broken. The duckbills abandoned the beach, lumbering towards the trees to rejoin the rest of their herd. But then, an explosion of the ocean sent their heads turning as the 60-foot shark burst from the water, its enormous head and upper torso quivering as it fought to remain suspended above the waves. The broken remains of its prey grasped within its terrible jaws, and an incredible display of raw power, the Meg shook the reptile from side to side, allowing its upper front row of 7-inch serrated teeth to rip through the crystalline bone, the action sending swells of pink frothing water in every direction. No other scavengers dared to approach the Meg as it fed. The predatory fish had no mate to share its kill with, no young to feed. A rogue hunter and territorial by nature, the shark mated out of instinct and killed its young when it could, for the only challenger to its reign came from its own kind. A marvel of nature that it had adapted and evolved over hundreds of millions of years, it would survive the natural catastrophes and climatic changes that caused the mass extinction of giant reptiles and countless other prehistoric mammals and fish. And while the megalodon's own numbers would eventually dwindle, some members of its species would manage to survive, isolated from the world of man in the perpetual darkness of the unexplored ocean depths. This has been a prehistoric reading of the prologue to The Meg, a novel of deep terror. Thank you for listening.